called reading. Top to bottom, left to right. Group words together as a sentence. Take Tylenol for any headaches. Midol for any cramps.
I'm going to have to put a disclaimer in the beginning of this that I know that I was harsher than I intended to be. I wrote 2.5 pages of thoughts. I took notes the entire time I was listening to the book because I assumed we would do this. And I was definitely harsher than I intended to be because I'm a little drunk right now.
Oh.
Hello, fellow humans. So today we have something interesting, John. I've never done this in my entire life. I'm going to talk about a book I read on a video. So because of many of your suggestions, I ended up reading Ghostwriter, Neil Peart's Ghostwriter. It was interesting, and in honor of him and his drinking of whiskey pretty much the entire time that he was on his journey with his little baby soul, I'm going to go ahead and pour myself some. He always drank Macallan, but I don't have a bottle of Macallan, and I'm moving in like a week and a half, so I'm not going to go buy a whole bottle. I got Cleveland Underground bourbon whiskey finished with a black cherry wood. So to the dearly departed.
I don't have whiskey, but I do have Dogfish Head 90-minute Imperial IPA.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. Oh, I forgot how strong this was. So I gotta let that ice work for a minute. So to preface everything I'm about to say, because obviously the topic of this book is pretty serious, I want to be very upfront that like nothing I say, I want to be taken as detracting from Neil's journey of dealing with his own grief, because that's not a thing you can critique. I am very against gatekeeping how someone else handles their grief. That is a very personal thing, and there's no right or wrong answer. So understand that I approach that from this point of view. So I do absolutely love portions of the book. There are portions that I definitely rub me the wrong way, but none of it has to do with me thinking he handled his grief wrong, if that makes sense. Because a massive loss is not a thing that you can choose to handle right or wrong. Oftentimes, you find ways to cope in your own way, and he found his own ways, and his own way was to run. So I broke up sort of what I'd like to say into good and the bad, and we're going to start with the good because I think you should always start there. So a lot of the little tiny things in this book that I really enjoyed were just him being his weird self. So he bird watches, which is a very old person thing to do. I actually was joking right before I started reading this book with my wife, Candy, that I was going to become a bird watcher because I'm already an 80-year-old man. Yesterday, I sat on the beach with my dog in slipper Crocs eating butterscotch pudding. I don't think you get like 80-year-old man more than that scenario, and that was literally what I did yesterday. So I like the bird watching. In fact, we love playing this board game and that I thought of throughout the book multiple times. It's called Wingspan. And my favorite thing about Wingspan is there's a ton of bird cards. And every single time you play a bird card, on the bottom of the bird card is a bird fact about that bird. And every single card is unique and every card is a different bird. And the bird facts make that game amazing. It's a good game anyway. But to me, like getting to look at this bird and read the bird fact made me so happy. And so I kept thinking of the bird fact cards the entire time I was going through this book and hearing Neil talk about all of the different birds that he was seeing on his journey. Side note, there's also an app for Wingspan where you can scan the cards and then it'll play the sound that bird makes. It makes the game take way longer to play, but it's so good. So highly recommend Wingspan, I guess. That being said, Neil and I both hate loud motorcycle riders, which shocked me, John. So the whole thing is he goes on a motorcycle journey. So that is not a thing I expected to have in common with him. He complains at different parts in the book that Harley Davidson riders and the like give other cyclists a bad name for being loud and rude, and it's just very stereotypical. Like I say, a Harley Davidson rider, and most of you can conjure an image in your head, and it's, a bunch of bikes going through a quiet neighborhood and then revving so loudly that it wakes up everything possible for miles. So I kind of just a funny thing we agreed on. One of the things I really liked he did, and John, I feel like you and most of our fellow humans here would get a lot more out of it than I know that I did, and that's that he started and often ended his chapters with song references, with a snippet of lyrics, and then he would say the year and title of the song.
How Stephen King of him.
A very Stephen King of him. That was a good reference. So like a lot of them I did catch because of this channel. I caught them. The Roll the Bones and Limelight and Analog Boy and a bunch of the songs that I've been shown because of you were songs he referenced. And I found that when he would reference a song that I had heard, it hit a lot harder. So I thought that was really neat. And his writing style, I thoroughly enjoy. He writes lyrics, and the lyrics sort of bring a story alive. They're very poetic, and his writing style was also the same. It was very poetic. There was a lot of descriptor of things he saw on his journey that were really neat. You could also tell that he's an obsessive reader, and I really like that. This was my first real view into who he was as a person outside of the lyrics that I've heard in songs so far. And especially in the beginning and middle of the book, he's obsessed with Jack London, which made me laugh because I went through a time period obsessed with Jack London. So I totally understood where he was coming from. I've read Yukon and White Fang and Call the Wild, Iron Heel, even a bunch of Jack London wrote this series of short stories called Before Adam, which are also like weird. All of it came out in like the early 1900s. So I've read a lot of Jack London, so a lot of what he was talking about in those portions of the book also really hit home. I really enjoyed it a lot. He talks about food more than we do, John.
Really?
Yeah, and that's saying something, right? If you watch this channel for any period of time, you know how much John and I talk about food.
It's amazing how we make connections between music and food. It really is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think it actually makes a lot of sense to me because I did do some thinking about this. Food and music are experiential things. And they're experiential things that transcend most other things in our lives, because find me a person who's never heard music and find me a person who's never eaten food.
Right. Well,
they're just two things that are so central to the human experience that I think it sort of makes sense that they would go hand in hand in a lot of ways. But also there's a flip side to that I'll get to in a moment. Mm-hmm. Near the end of the book, he ends up dating again. And his reticence, his sheepishness almost about going back out on dates again was, I think, one of the most relatable moments in the book. It was tough to see him try to get back out there, try to open up, as he refers to it, his baby soul, to once again sort of let love in. And so I think going on that journey with him as well. And then, of course, you have the end of the book where he basically does a synopsis of what happened. So it was written in 1997, and then it was published. Well, so everything started happening in 1997. That's when his daughter died. And then the book wasn't published until 2002. And so 97 to 2002 is the time period the book is about. And so it ends basically with him being remarried because he does find love again and he does get remarried. And so you end up with that full circle journey of the loss of love and then the gaining of love. And I thought that story, I mean, first of all, it's a true story. So, that I was very happy that he did come out of it and find love again. But at the same time, I have some thoughts about that we'll get to in the bad section.
Oh boy.
I will say that one of the things I really appreciated was that he didn't turn to religion. There was a tiny part in the book where he's sitting in a Catholic church that his daughter loved. And I thought it was going to happen. I was getting nervous. I was
Dave,
like,
Dave, how come? Wait a minute. Hold on. Now, where's your honesty in reporting here?
That is honesty in reporting. I was getting nervous. I'm honestly reporting my feelings on the book because I read it.
Okay. But you said, far be it for you to dissuade or force anyone to mourn in whatever way. And then here, what if he did mourn in such a way that it led him back to God, to a Christian faith or a Catholic faith? What if?
Well, we're all born atheists, so being led back to is a weird statement. The natural state of being is atheism. You're trained to believe in a God.
Because in early photographs of Rush, the band, Mr. Neil Peart is sporting a cross necklace.
Well, either way, given everything I knew about him, basically from his lyrics, and you have to understand, my knowledge of him is from nothing more than the songs you have showed me so far. So that is the entire breadth of my knowledge. And so given his often nihilistic lyrics, it's just not what I expected from him. Some of his journey is also not.
I always thought it was nihilistic.
I'm probably wrong. Nihilistic sounds right. I've actually heard it both ways, and I'm not sure which is right.
Okay, fair enough.
So that to me was an interesting moment in the book, where he decided not to, and that is about where I'm gonna move on, because there was a lot of this book that I struggled through, and it's not that I struggled with confronting the pain of loss through his eyes, and I think that's part of the problem. So a lot of this book is him publishing letters that he wrote on his journey. Lot of the book. And I think when you have the narrative sections that he tries to tie together the different letters, that is the best portions of the book to a point. Though the narrative structure is a little odd, I think he needed a better editor. The book should have been shorter, for sure. But that being said, it's almost like he phones in a lot of the in-between sections. Like it's just him getting from letter to letter at points. And the entire back half of the book almost is just letters to his friend Brutus, a convicted drug dealer who's currently in jail and goes to jail at the beginning of this book.
Wow.
Which is not, boy, talk about a surprise. Talk about a thing I didn't see coming. His best friend Brutus is a multiply convicted drug offender who's now permanently I don't know permanently, but in prison.
Dealer or offender?
A dealer.
Okay.
Seller. Retailer? I don't know what you call it. Either way,
technically not retail.
Well, I mean, now it is. But either way, like that is definitely not what I saw coming. Is his writing letters to his best friend in jail. Here's the problem with that. He writes a lot of detail and a lot of things in these letters to Brutus because he's writing to a man who has nothing else to do, who's sitting in jail. I'm not in jail.
Yeah, you could be doing better things.
And I do have a... So
That's
you
fair.
see my point there.
Yeah.
And that is mainly why I say like he could have done with a better editor. There was often just not quite a cohesive flow to the story. And then on top of that, we have these long sections of these letters to Brutus that are both simultaneously a bit slow, and I understand why he wanted to do it, because to him, he took Brutus on the journey. And Brutus was a guy who he rode with many, many times, according to the book.
Is this like a high school friend, or somebody who's...
No, it's just a friend of his. They owned lake houses on the same little lake together because he could swim to Brutus's dock.
Oh,
And they both liked motorcycling, and so they would go on motorcycle journeys together, and he loved hanging out with Brutus. And so he's leaning on Brutus to help him work through his grief, while at the same time Brutus goes to jail.
oh, jeez. So Brutus went to jail during this process. Oh, wow. Wow.
So he's writing all these letters to Brutus as a way to take Brutus on the journey with him. And he even states very clearly in the book that Brutus was with him. Brutus was on the journey. He would sit at dinner every night, drinking heavily and writing letters to Brutus. So that is why there are so many letters to Brutus. And Brutus is practically the main character of the story. Like, yes, Neil Peart is the main character of the story as we're seeing the story through his eyes, but Brutus is the second most mentioned person, more than his dead wife and daughter.
Okay.
Which is interesting.
I didn't see that coming.
No, I didn't see it coming either. Brutus ends up being a massive part of this story as he's constantly talking to Brutus, talking about times they spent together, talking about what he thinks they would be doing if Brutus wasn't in jail.
So does he think Brutus is a pretty good guy then? I mean,
I have no idea. He constantly talks about Brutus getting out of jail. I know nothing of the story outside of what was in the book.
Do you think Brutus is real, or is this an imaginary? Is this a fictional?
That was a thought I had.
Okay.
I do not know. I did not research it. I do not know if Brutus is real. He's certainly treated as a real person. And in fact, it's even mentioned that when Brutus went to jail, Neil contacted one of his personal assistants and said, make sure that you financially help support Brutus's family. So I get the feeling Brutus is real, that this story is real.
Okay.
But it did occur to me that it could be a literary device. I do not think so. I think it's real.
Okay.
The book ends up being a whole lot about what happens on his journey, experientially, and I'm talking what he sees, a ton of what he eats, the birds he sees, a ton of geography about where he's going next, what hotel he stays in. I was expecting a lot of introspection, and what instead happened was a ton of description of an external journey peppered with small bits of philosophy.
Huh.
But it was far less about an internal journey of grief and far more about an external running away from dealing with grief. And I think that was such a central theme to the book. He doesn't go on a journey of grief. He goes on a runaway from it.
Wow. Does he acknowledge that?
A little bit. He regularly says that he feels like he has to keep moving. That is a central theme of the book. He has to keep moving. And that to me screams of running away and not confronting. And that aside, I think that leads me to my biggest, most glaring issue I personally felt through the journey of this book.
Okay.
That really is delicious. So he does something that none of us could do.
Well, because of the resources necessary.
Because he's rich.
Take time off.
Because he's stupid. He doesn't take time off, John. He takes years off.
Years.
And he doesn't sit in a quiet, small house for those years. He spends tons of money traveling the country on his motorcycle.
Traveling actually the continent.
Yeah, the continent, because he all throughout Canada, all throughout the U.S., and then all throughout Mexico as well.
Yeah.
The descriptions of his food and drinks, this dude was spending $100 a dinner quite often, between multiple courses and drinks, and staying oftentimes in very nice places. And when he didn't, you usually got a description of a stayed in a terrible place tonight.
So
he goes out and takes years off in a way that none of us could. And I think that was one of my toughest things with this entire book, is that is glossed over like crazy. And it's not even just glossed over. I think if it was just glossed over, I might be a little more okay with it, but it's not. He mentions money multiple times, and it is always him complaining about it. Now,
really?
Yeah, he complains about money multiple times while he mentions things like calling his personal assistant to have credit cards published in different names so he won't be found out for who he is on his journey. While he's calling his personal assistant to say, take care of Brutus's family, well, that dude got himself in jail for multiple drug offenses. While he's having his personal lake house taken care of and upgraded to have memorials built in multiple locations, both in his house and back in Canada, while he's selling his other nice house in Canada. He makes side mentions of things like when he gets back to his house, since his wife isn't there anymore, he can put his Ducati in the front window. He calls his personal lawyer in Florida, so that Ducati motorcycle, not car.
I knew what you were saying, but like
the dude has also the motorcycle that he rode on this whole journey. It was a birthday present from his wife. Like, they're the kind of people that can just give BMW motorcycles as an off birthday present. So for him to complain about money is so out of touch with reality that it really took me out of the book.
Oh boy.
It is mentioned one time in the entire book did he mention, you could wiggle your way to twice, but realistically one time did he actually confront that what he gets to do is not normal. And it is when another friend pointed it out in a letter to him. He glosses over it real fast and then goes back to complaining. In another portion, he makes a side comment about how people will mention how incredible it is that he has the freedom to take this much time off and do this much travel. And he just brushes it aside and is just like, yeah, I've been a full-time griever for like a year and a half, but I don't find myself to be lucky at all. Because, of course, he's dealing with grief. And I get that. I'm not saying he should feel lucky for getting to travel, given that his daughter and his wife died within a 10-month span. I am not saying that he should sit around philosophizing about how lucky of a person he is. I totally get it. But for the rest of us, I could not help reading this book and thinking, what happens if my wife dies?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'll tell you that if Candy got cancer, we would not spend months and months in Barbados while she got special treatment, and all of our friends flew out to hang out with us in the nice beach house we rented while she slowly died. That's not what would be happening if my wife got cancer and died. And then if my wife did just suddenly die in a car accident like his daughter did, I would not be taking years off on a journey of self-discovery nurturing my baby soul. I would be moving in with a friend and picking up more jobs than the one I currently have to try to get back on my feet and move on with life. And so to watch his just brushing aside of what anyone else's experience and all of normal life would be, while, and this is the clincher for me, while insulting and belittling the fans that made that possible, is what killed this book for me.
Oh my goodness.
Insulting
and belittling?
Multiple times in this book, he talks about how annoyed he is if he's ever noticed or found out for who he is. He does not ever want to interact with a fan that made his life possible. And I understand that given things like Limelight, we know his opinion on fame, but at the end of the day, man, you are filthy rich because of that fame.
Yeah, I'm surprised to hear that. Everyone says that he's just, a little claustrophobic, or he just doesn't, he really treasures his privacy, and he can't pretend that people are, like he says in the lyrics, I can't pretend that this guy walking up to me is my closest friend.
No, I get that, but at the end of the day, he's cold.
Well, that's what I'm hearing you say now, and I do look forward to reading the comments on this. Wow.
I mean, in the book, he calls people who weren't dressed to his standards at a restaurant lowlives. He wishes death on people a lot during this book for the crime of existing near him.
I was buying Rush records, in my teenage years, when it would take me maybe a full day's work to earn the money after taxes to go and buy a poster and a record.
You made his journey possible.
Right.
And he wants nothing to do with you. And at no point even acknowledges that you made his life possible, that you, the fans, are the reason he can go back to his beautiful lake house with his daughter's room turned into an amazing memorial library while he was gone. He has housekeepers. He has people to do chores for him. He has multiple personal assistants. He never acknowledges the life that he has at all. And I think that was such a misstep for someone to not look inward. And I think that is my ultimate biggest problem with this book. He doesn't look inward. This is about running. This book is about his running.
Where is this book you read in his list of books? Is it first? Is it in the middle? Is it early?
So from what I saw, he did publish some books before this. In fact, another motorcycle memoir. And this is the only one I've read, to be clear. But it's not what I expected. He ignores people like the plague. And that really bothered me. How he talks about other people, unless you are his friend and contributing actively to his life, he doesn't care about you at all. He doesn't even like you. He doesn't want you to exist around him. And I think that that's tough. And in my opinion, he never does find what he's looking for. I think his little baby soul at the end of this book doesn't grow. It kept moving. It moved back to the studio. It moved back on tour. It moved back to the next woman. But it doesn't grow. And what ended up happening is he ran until he found another woman to get married to and then married her. And then that's what let him move on. And that's kind of tough to swallow. Like, what actually got him to the point of moving on was a girlfriend. After everything he experienced, after all of his loss, after all of his journeys, it was just one pretty woman to get him back into the studio with Rush.
Wow.
And I think that's kind of I'm happy for him. I'm happy that he found love again. I really am. The loss that he went through was overwhelming, but not unique. And I think that's what was tough for me. Like, I personally know people who have lost children, who have lost spouses. The loss he experienced was not unique. It's not necessarily common, but he is not alone here. But his journey was unique. The fact that he could just say, I'm done. He could just F off for years.
Well, how old was he when that?
I want to say 50s. I'd have to look. His daughter was returning to college, so whatever age that.
So, okay, so he's
standard
probably
was.
in his 50s. Well, wait a minute,
40s, 50s. I don't honestly know.
Wiki on this. That book came out in 97.
No, his daughter died in 97. The book came out in 2002.
2002. So he was born in 52. So in 02, yeah, he was 50 years old.
So he was 50 years old. The average.
I mean, in Canada, I think they're still retiring under 60 in Canada. So he was quasi near retirement age.
Sure.
Technically.
But he then went out and spent so much money on his nurturing his baby soul that his accountant told him that he couldn't keep spending like this. Although you find out later in the story Yes, he could. He just couldn't keep spending like that without also spending some of the principal. That is how much money he had in investments.
Oh.
Yeah.
So he was
Boo-hoo.
outspending
Boo-hoo.
his interest.
Yeah.
He was,
Boo-hoo.
he was outspending his interest.
And that's the thing to me. Like, there would be little nuggets, and then you'd read further in the story and you'd be like, wait, what now? That's just your interest? Yeah.
Wow.
And that, anyway, I think I've harped on it enough. I expected from the lyrics that I saw of this man a story of a lot of philosophical introspection. And what I got was predominantly a story of being annoyed that his friend is in jail for being a drug dealer, running away from confronting near all grief, drowning it instead in a lot of Macallan and a lot of other alcohol, being annoyed if anyone who got him to the point that he could do this in the first place even entered his sphere of consciousness.
I mean, was there ever a situation where a fan, like, from across the bar simply bought him a drink with a tip of the hat? Does he ever give kind of a...
So at one point in the book, someone asks if he's a drummer. And he lies and says no. And then, of course, they examine his credit card closely, and he has a fake credit card under a different name.
Of course he does.
And that's the closest we get. He only ever mentions fans as a giant annoyance in his life. So that rubbed me the wrong way, for sure. And I am on record as saying I would happily be rich but never want to be famous. So, like, I get it, but at the same time, there should be a level of kindness and respect, because your fans are why you got to do this. Your fans are why you can live on your interest while spending God knows how much money.
Yeah, that kind of bugs me.
Like,
I gotta say,
only Ra could tell you how much money this dude spent on these journeys. But to have the kind of money that's just like, my best friend went to jail for drug dealing. Take care of his family. Like,
really? So he was paying for the drug dealer's family's life?
I do not know the rest of the story. I'm just telling you what was mentioned in the story. It is mentioned later that Brutus had to sell his lake house for legal fees, so I don't know how big of a thing that became, but it was interesting to me, and I'm very glad that I went through the journey with him, because I think it gave me a very interesting view into his life, and I'm very curious to listen to the album that came out right after that, because the book ends with them going back into the studio in 2002 and putting out an album, and he said a couple of the songs on the album were obviously coming directly out of a place of coming out of grief, but then the rest of the songs went on to his regular, like, looking at social issues or the environment or whatever else. So I'm very curious to maybe review a couple of those songs. I'll give you the list. I have it written down of those songs. So I'm very curious to react to those, because for my own personal journey into Rush, I'm curious as to what he put out there. But I think that at the end of the day, this was tough for me, because I thought it was going to be a very philosophical, introspective book through the lens of a journey of discovery. And instead, that is not what this was. It was instead a picture of a man who was actually very cold, rather calloused, a man who poured himself fully into everything he did. For instance, like, when he looked into Jack London, he pours himself into reading everything Jack London does. And when you look at his drumming and how methodical he is, he pours himself into being a drummer. And I think he poured himself into the journey of running away from confronting any semblance of his grief, and never actually did. I think grief doesn't go away. I think it just gets easier. And he got to the point where he ran long enough where it got easier, and then started dating, and then went back into life. And I struggle so much because I don't want to take away from his personal grief journey, and that's not for me to judge. But here I am judging it. So, so be kinder. You know, like I think I wish that the lesson he learned was be kind to those around you, because you never know when you won't have them in your life anymore. But that's not the lesson he learned. And for some reason that bugs me. Like, I have the right to gatekeep his lessons. And that's wrong of me. And I get that. But I haven't gone on my for free multi-year journey with $500,000 a month. So, you know, in your face.
Well, I'll tell you what, you get me thinking. Some of the things you described speak of a psychological disorder.
I'd love to read a psychologist's reaction to this book.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm wondering why. I would think that has happened. I think what you're describing to me, I mean, from my knowledge of psychology, there's some what they call borderline personality disorder and perhaps a little bipolar.
Well, he literally talks about different personalities in the book. How he has his playboy personality. He has the ghost rider, which is the solo running away personality. He has his little baby soul, which is like a 14-year-old girl or something personality. He literally talks about dissociative disorders like in the book. And then it ends with they all come back together because he found love and moved on. And honestly, I was teary-eyed at the scene of his wedding when he finally was moving on. I was rooting for him, and I don't want this to come off as I wasn't.
Right.
But yeah, so that was in the book, to your point.
Yeah, I mean, what you're describing, you know, first of all, being a quasi-performer type myself, one thing I've learned, first of all comedians are significantly damaged people. Every comedian I've ever met, every comedian I've ever talked to, things I've read, these are significantly damaged people.
As someone who has done stand-up multiple times and also gotten pretty high in a couple different stand-up competitions, agreed. Agreed, and I mean that personally. To me, agreed.
So just the idea that he has issues that he you know, you could say deals with, lives with, whatever. It gets a little bit harder to be too angry at his situation or at the things he says, even a little bit. You know, I think I mentioned in one of our videos, I guess it'll come out before this, where how did I describe my brother, the pain inflictor in house, you know,
something like that.
So, you know, I can look at my brother and I can hate his guts. I mean, I can hate him to the point where if he were a bass player and I saw him drowning in a lake, I'd throw him his amp. That would sink him for sure.
Joke, John. It's a well-crafted joke.
So what I'm saying is that there's a side of me that absolutely cannot stand this human that I was, you know, living with for you know, my pre-18 years.
Through no choice of yours, though. I will.
No choice of mine. Yeah. I know your place on that.
Yeah. I have many thoughts on that.
Yeah, but at the same time, having gotten to know him a little bit as an adult, I've at least gotten to a place where, you know what, the boy is psychologically damaged. Some of his upbringing led to the way he is.
Well, I mean, it's your brother, so there was that.
Dave, you know what Dave?
I know, bite your shiny metal.
You can bite my shiny. That's exactly what you can do. You know, but even though I know all that stuff about him, it doesn't make me want to be near him. I don't lose sleep over this. You know, if I can make a joke out of it, that's probably one of my psychological issues. It's the way I deal with the pain of what I experience. So, on one side, I want to give Neil not a complete pass, but a little bit of a pass. Because of this, because at the level that he's at, the money he had, that he could live for a year on the
he never had
interest
to work
he
again.
earns?
He never had to. No, he couldn't live for a year on it. He could massively spend on it.
Okay.
Massively spend. Like, there wasn't live for a year. There was spend an amount of money you and I won't make in multiple years,
but even
and not touch the principal.
Taking into account his lifestyle prior to leaving, that he could survive for a year on just the interest of his earnings, tells me that he is not going to have anyone near him that is going to say, Neil, don't you think that's harsh? Neil, don't you think you should be more caring toward people? Mm-hmm. Neil, he's going to be surrounded by yes men.
He's surrounded by people that predominantly work for him or derive much of their income from his existence.
Right. And to keep their jobs, they can't tell him the truth.
Mm-hmm.
That's the cycle. That's the battle. That's part of what did Michael Jackson in. It's part of what did Elvis in. You know, at that level, you can't be a no man because no men get fired.
Mm-hmm. No men don't get paychecks, and the rest of us got a mortgage.
Right.
Yeah. So I totally get it, and I don't want to sound like I'm bashing him for that.
Okay.
What I'm saying is that at the end of the day, art speaks to you where you're at, right?
Yeah.
And so this book spoke to me where I'm at, and when I try to put myself into the shoes of loss and dealing with grief, my world is so other than his that I have a real hard time when he's cold to people around him.
Right. Well, you definitely have a hard time associating.
I can't fathom it to begin with.
Right.
I just can't.
Like, let me ask you, I don't know if this is too hard, Dave. Okay, Candy next week gets diagnosed with a cancerous tumor.
First of all, we're in America, so we're going to go bankrupt on medical bills alone. He was at least Canadian.
Okay,
so.
let's not get into the politics and.
That's not getting into it. You asked a question. We go
but
bankrupt
I'm asking,
from
how
medical
do
bills.
you, as a human, personally deal with it? Let's say you know for a year, and then the end comes, and it's you alone. You've been married to this woman for 25 years. What do you see yourself doing?
Step one, I don't get to quit working.
I didn't ask you to compare
I'm just saying, step one, I don't get to quit working.
Certainly
I don't
not.
get to go to Barbados and
Correct.
and just screw off for a year plus and not care.
Correct.
10 months, technically.
Correct.
But I mean, I think we work as little as possible. We try to spend as much time as we can together. And then when she dies, I get to go work and then spend most of my life in horribly crippling medical debt because it's America. So I don't get to go on a journey of my little soul, nursing it across whenever I want.
I just want to know, how do you heal yourself, Dave? How do you heal yourself?
And so here is actually where I'll say I think I heal myself in the same way that in a similar-esque way that he did, but entirely differently in that I'd be surrounded by them personally, friends. And I do think the journey he goes on is very much a journey of talking to friends. Most of the journey is seen through the letters that he's writing to friends, reconnecting. And so like that journey of dealing with grief through finding love and acceptance with others totally makes sense. And in fact, I think he made some really cool points too. Cool is the wrong word for what I'm about to say. When he would go visit someone, he would always leave and talk about feeling so empty. Because I know exactly what happened. I'd moved back in with Dan for a little while, since he's my legal address right now, and it's where my mail goes. As I got back on my feet, I'd have to get a roommate to live anywhere because, modern day life. And so I would move in with Dan for a while and then get a roommate and find a place to live and, still have to obviously work regularly. But I would feel, as I was hanging out with Dan and his wife and his daughter, sadness. Because the emptiness that you get when you realize not only what you've lost, but then see in real time that someone else still has it, makes you feel the loss even deeper. And so I completely empathize with all of his talks of visiting friends and having happy times and then leaving feeling almost more empty and sad than he was when it started. That makes sense to me. And that's why I want to make it very clear. Like, there's a lot of this book that I do think resonates with a journey of grief. 100%. It was his journey of grief. Of course it does. But there's also a portion that I cannot disconnect myself from that says you're a cold person who has no idea how insanely lucky you are that you had to deal with a grief that is unfortunately common on this planet in a way that no one else I know would get to deal with the same grief.
Okay. All right. There's no doubt in his situation that's going to be the case, you know. And Elvis got divorced, and you could blame Elvis. I mean, he certainly wasn't the greatest husband in the world.
I know so little about him. I'm not.
Yeah,
I can't speak to that at all.
You know, but his divorce, you know, killed him. Honestly, his divorce was the end of him. So a lot of times we're to blame. Anyway, as I read, I wanted to find if anybody had diagnosed him with anything, and I stumbled upon someone who read the book who is in the mental health field. Now, I didn't get exactly what I was looking for, but here's something I came across here, just real quickly. I don't want to sit here and read while you're talking, you know, but I skimmed a little bit just so I could get an understanding. At the beginning of the book, his experience was people trying to befriend him because of who he was and how much money he had. And that caused him to have the belief life is good, but people suck. But the experience of death and his travels, his year-long travel, he ends
multiple
with
years actually.
Life sucks, but people are good. Did you get that from the book, or?
I don't think he ever got to the point where he said life sucks, but people in general are good. It was the girlfriend I now have, now wife, that well, now he's dead, but then at 2002 wife that he got was good. Like I said, I do think we saw the journey of a man who did lean on his friends heavily, and that is absolutely what I would do. That I think that is a very healthy thing to do, is to lean on your friends.
Right.
So I totally get that portion of the journey. I think my disconnect is just how he treats his fans, i.e. the people that allowed him to have the freedom he had, the life that he had, and how he treats other people in general that are not in his friend group.
Right. It says here, during his trip, a few of the people he met knew his plight, but they were civil and hospitable. Hospitable. And that helped him heal. Did you get that from the book as well?
That's not how he talked about him, though.
Huh.
That's not how he talked about him at all.
Yeah, I think, you know, one of the differences, you know, we often talk about how your life experience has a lot to do with what music influences you and where you are when you hear it and all that. So I imagine if the person writing the story, and this person does admit that they are a huge Rush fan, that lens, that filter, causes them to read the book and, you know, almost like a diffracting, is that the word? Diffractor. Anyway, that they kind of don't even see the negative side you're seeing because you have no emotional connection to Neil Peart.
Outside of I have genuinely loved the music that I've heard so far, and I will say this is not going to ruin that at all.
Okay, good. You're right, because I often said after meeting a handful of my rock and roll star legends, I've come to the conclusion it's probably not a good idea to meet your legends.
Never meet your heroes. It's a common trope.
You will be disappointed. It's just a guarantee.
And maybe never learn too much about your heroes is
right.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
My dad had always enjoyed a particular female country singer. I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but after getting about halfway through her own autobiography, he closed the book because he was starting to hate her guts. He put it down. Couldn't finish it because
man.
he didn't want to know anymore what a crap person she was. Or is, because she's still alive. But yeah, you shouldn't know too much about your heroes. That's why I like to I read the autobiographies of the drummer from Fleetwood Mac. Hey, look, I love the Rumors album and a couple of their other records and songs, but I'm not like in any way emotionally connected to Fleetwood Mac. Same thing with the Rolling Stones, and I've read autobiographies from these various people who I have no direct affinitive, connection with. Neil Young is another one. I love reading autobiographies because really what I love is to hear the details of how songwriting came about and stuff like that. That's what I'm looking for in these things.
You wanna know a hack, a quick trip, a quick way to skip most of an autobiography? Okay, what you do is you go to a bookstore and you pick up an autobiography. And then you just
throw it across the room, and if it hits a male, no, I'm sorry, that's a different thing.
No, you just flip to the About the Author section. Done.
I don't understand.
It's an autobiography. They are the author, John.
That was a joke.
It was a joke. Just read the auto.
Okay, wait a minute. Let me
Too much beer, John. Too much beer.
Let me edit in my actual preferred response. Ready? Okay. Look the same way you were looking when you finished that story.
I've just realized, first of all, this review is 50 minutes long. Second of all, I'm gonna have to put a disclaimer in the beginning of this that I know that I was harsher than I intended to be. I wrote 2.5 pages of thoughts. I took notes the entire time I was listening to the book because I assumed we would do this, and I was definitely harsher than I intended to be because I'm a little drunk right now.
Oh.
That's what I have to say about that. I did not. I forgot that this was 62%. So that's what I have to say about that.
You know what, John? Mine's only 9%.
Slacker. Your volume is larger, but not enough. So with that, thank you so much. If you've made it to this point of the review, I just want to say, thank you for hanging out with us and being a part of the channel. I sincerely...
And it was nice knowing you guys.
It was... Thanks for being a part of it.
We'll see you later. We're going to be the Anne Murray channel from here on out.
Just done. No, maybe the Jack London channel.
Captain and Tennille.
At least Jack London's all public domain, so we won't have to deal with constant copyright strikes. So, actually... Yeah, 19... Yeah. That would be. It would be public domain because it's 100 years. So, I will say, I'm sorry that I was as negative as I sounded. I get a little passionate. If music is made good with passion, then drunken ramblings about a book should also be made good with passion. So you're welcome, is what I have to say. And to end this, John, I'm going to play trivia with my wife tonight, and I'm super excited because we love playing trivia, and it's been a long time, and we found a place that is at a board game cafe, and I'm super excited. You know what we did last time we were there? 3 days ago, we played Wingspan, the game I talked about in this video. Full circle.
Wow. You want some trivia before we head out then and do it opposite?
Of course I want some trivia. This is our video. If you don't like it, stop watching.
Just stop talking.
Never. It's not even stop talking, it's stop drinking. Actually, tomorrow is my wife's birthday, but she works tomorrow. So in about 12 minutes, I'm going to walk down and buy her a number of treats so that when I wake her up to go play trivia later, because that's what she wanted to do tonight, she'll have a bunch of treats to wake up to. There's a really nice local coffee shop that she absolutely adores, and I know exactly what she loves there. So I'm going to go down and get her one of those minimum. I'm ready.
Okay, Dave. If our third president came back to life during the late 70s and early 80s.
Jefferson, go on.
Let me try a different question.
Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison, and Monroe. These are the U.S. presidents all lined up in a row. Adams, Jackson, Van Buren, Harrison, and Tyler. Polka, Taylor, Freeman. Yeah, it's a song I learned forever ago. And let me tell you, I've gotten a lot of trivia questions correct over the years because I can name all the presidents in order.
If he was flipping through TV Guide, what show might he assume was all about him?
The Jeffersons, I assume, is the answer to that question.
That would have been it. Thank you. If you performed all of the basic yo-yo tricks using Yo-Yo Ma as your yo-yo,
so just screaming the whole time?
Which of the following things would you not be doing?
That was a good Yo-Yo Ma joke, though, right? Like,
why you say screaming? He doesn't even sing.
Oh God, I was thinking of Yoko Ono. I made a joke about a different person.
Yeah.
Made a joke about a different person.
Oh, then you're definitely not going to get the answer to this one.
Oh, go on.
If you performed all of the basic yo-yo tricks using Yo-Yo Ma as your yo-yo, which of the following things would you not be doing? Walking the dog with a Juilliard graduate.
Ooh.
Gleaming the cube with a Chinese citizen. Going around the world with a famous man. Or rocking the baby with a famous cellist.
Wasn't Yo-Yo Ma a cellist?
He was. He is.
I know that much then. But it's what he would not be doing. So, not a cellist. I'm pretty sure Yo-Yo... Ooh. All right, so I've eliminated one. I'm pretty sure Yo-Yo Ma's a woman. No, Yo-Yo Ma's a man. So, a famous man. Sorry. I was back to Yoko Ono again.
Hey, take another sip of that drink.
It's gone. I was back to Yoko Ono again. So, yeah. Yo-Yo Ma's a man. So, 50-50 shot at this point. So, what are my two options that are left?
Walking the dog with a Juilliard graduate or gleaming the cube with a Chinese citizen?
Ooh, Juilliard or Chinese. I do not know the nationality of Yo-Yo Ma. I want to say Japanese, so I say Juilliard.
Yo-Yo Ma is an American yo-yo, and gleaming the cube is a yo-yo skateboarder trick. So the answer is gleaming the cube. That's the thing you would not be doing.
Fair enough. Gleaming the Cube, wasn't that a movie from the 80s?
I don't think so.
Oh, I bet it was.
Gleaming the Cube?
Gleaming the Cube.
Thank you, Wikipedia. Let's take a look.
Gleaming the Cube, 1989. A movie. Boom. Gleaming the Cube is a 1989 American neo-noir film directed by
Noir.
Something. Oh, neo-noir film directed by Graham Clifford?
Graham Clifford.
I don't know. I'm very drunk, John. So with that, the point is, Gleaming the Cube. I remembered.
Well, you spoke of, like, 80s movie. 1989
Nope.
Really is
in
the
90s.
90s.
Nope. In the 80s.
It's the 90s.
Counted. Nope. 89. Eight's the first
there wasn't
number.
even any 80s music in 1989. It was all 90s music. And I can prove that. And I will in our next video.
Well, it's been almost a full hour. So what book should I drunkenly ramble about next?
Wow. Suddenly drunken history starts to make sense.